The reading this morning is by Amy Jill Levine. She's a leading Jewish scholar of the New Testament, teaching at Vanderbilt University. This is from her chapter, The Pearl of Great Price. And she starts by quoting the words of Jesus from Matthew 13. The kingdom of heaven is like a man, a merchant, seeking fine pearls. On finding one pearl of extremely great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. So, Professor Levine says, the merchant has found what he wanted, although until the moment of the find, he didn't realize his true desire. He's reconceptualized both his past values and his future plans. The magnitude of the life change is paramount. He is no longer what he was. Once he's found the one pearl, he's no longer buying and selling. He's no longer a merchant. By the standards of the status quo, whether in first century Galilee or 21st century America, the merchant has acted in a reckless manner. The merchant, though, sets up alternative standards not determined by society, but determined by something else, whether his own desires or a heavenly prompt. He really is countercultural. He defines his treasure in his own terms. He's able to recognize what for him has true value, and he can do what he needs to do in order to obtain it. The pearl that the merchant obtains is not simply the best of the lot, the one among the many. It is qualitatively different, singular, exemplary. It points beyond the concept of pearl to something new, something heretofore unseen and unknown. There's a transcendent quality, a mystery to this pearl. And so the parable provokes. Our erstwhile merchant first raises questions of our own acquisitiveness. We're continuously seeking whether the object is fine pearls, a new job, another degree, or spiritual fulfillment. But each time we find our goal, it turns out to be ephemeral. There's always a new necklace, a new career, a new form of study, a nagging sense that what we have done was not what we needed to do. We flit from desire to desire, never permanently fulfilled, always somewhat discordant. The merchant's actions show that knowing one's pearl obviates all other wants and desires. Not only can the cycle be broken, the merchant demonstrates that one can step out of it entirely. The issue isn't relative value, it's all or nothing. Thereby the parable asks, can we assess what is of ultimate value in our own lives? Not simply in terms of relativizing, but in terms of ultimate concern. More, it asks, are we willing to step aside from all that we have to obtain what we want? And so we ask, do we take stock of our priorities? What is our image of the kingdom of heaven? What really do we want? The parable consequently asks us if searching for pearls, searching for commodities or multiples or stuff is worth pursuing. It's good to know that there may be something out there beyond our imagination that demands our recognition of its ultimate value. It's good to know if our definition of what constitutes the kingdom of heaven is healthy or harmful. Not all pearls on the market are cultured. Some are fake, although their cost can be exceptionally high as well. Amy Jill Levine studied the parable of the pearl with some of her students. She describes the scene. On Monday evenings during the school term, I either teach or facilitate a divinity course at Riverbend Maximum Security Prison, where Tennessee's death row is located. The first year I taught at Riverbend, the class, 12 Riverbend inmates and 12 Vanderbilt divinity students, studied the Gospel of Matthew. After all, Matthew's gospel contains the parable of the sheep and the goats, which talks about visiting people in prison. When discussing this parable with my students, some candidates for ordination, others serving life sentences, I asked, what is your pearl of supreme value? For what would you sell everything that you own? One student in the Graduate Department of Religion mentioned the doctoral degree. The desire for a PhD was an irritant of sorts. She had been wanting to get her PhD directly after her Master of Divinity, and then life intervened. She got married, became a minister's wife, had children. Her husband discouraged her from getting her doctorate. She looked everywhere she could find, and then one day she ran across the website of the Vanderbilt Divinity School and decided to apply. Not only was she accepted, she was awarded a scholarship as well. For various and good reasons, entering the program coincided with the end of her marriage. That night she explained, I never expected to find myself here, but when the graduate school offer came, I did what I needed to accept it. I gave up my home and my status as minister's wife. I took out loans. I took back my original name. I do not know what will happen at the end of this program, but that does not matter. I'm doing what is right for me. I have my pearl. Most of us, Professor Levine says, I suspect, would not have had the courage to change our lives, our identities, for the sake of what we most want. We may not even know what our final goal is. This student showed the daring, the courage that many of us might lack. She redefined herself. One of the riverbed students, prisoner, responded with a single word, freedom. He would do what it takes, confession to rather than denial of his crime, anger management course, psychological tests, anything in order to increase his chances of parole. He realized what he wanted, freedom, only when he realized he did not have it. When and if he obtains it, he intends to break the cycle of crime and incarceration. With his sentence flattened or pardon granted, he's no longer the insider or the criminal, but the free man who needs to form his own new identity. When I drove home that evening with the searchlights and the barbed wire reflecting in my rearview mirror, I realized that this student's pearl is something that I take for granted. Another Riverbend student said, safety. He will invest all he has in order to ensure that he will not be knifed on the chow line or attacked in the shower. Again, his pearl is something I had not even considered. And a third said that when he came to prison, he lost all that he had, his property, his clothing, but also his identity, his dignity. He had to construct his own pearl, layer by painful layer, tier by tier, and see what was really important. Here's one final interpretation. I don't think it's quite what Jesus had in mind, but it does fit the question of ultimate concern. The word for pearl in Greek is margarita, a recognition that can bring new meaning to the expression pearly gates. When I mentioned this translation in class, one of my students, a recovering alcoholic, explained how the margarita, the drink, was her pearl of complete value. She sold everything, home, food, family, for the drink. Professor Levine concludes by saying, and so we ask, do we take stock of our priorities? What is our image of the kingdom? What really do we want? Jesus offered many analogies and metaphors in his various parables to describe what he called the kingdom of heaven. He spoke of mustard seeds, lost coins, lost sheep, and a lost son, as well as a pearl of great price. The very plenitude of comparison suggests that Jesus is pointing to something that is obscure and that needs to be clarified with many different angles of vision. It is clear that the kingdom of heaven that he's speaking about is both present. He says the kingdom of heaven is among you, but also prospective, something that already is and is also developing, growing, becoming more complete as we live into it. He's not talking about heaven or what happens after we die. Once in a while he does refer to heaven as that place. But it's clear that when he speaks about the kingdom of heaven, he's not referring to that idea of heaven. He's talking about what other religious traditions refer to as the eternal now, a way of living that is possible here and now, a way of being that experiences something like our notions of heaven will be, but in the present rather than in the future. This is not about pie in the sky when you die. It's about what is already starting, but will continue to grow and develop. This quality of being present now while also unfolding the future is part of why so many parables and metaphors were offered as an explanation. The very multiplicity of images also opens the way to various distortion. One popular understanding takes the name millennialism for images of a future golden age expressed elsewhere in the Bible, anticipated first by the Jews and then later by the Christians, a kingdom where the lion will lie down with the lamb, as foretold by the prophet Isaiah, or the eternal golden city of Jerusalem from the book of Revelations. The notion that human beings can bring about this millennial heaven on earth by violence has led to numerous catastrophic conflicts by religious zealots over the centuries, starting with the uprising against the Roman occupiers by the Jews that began about 30 years after Jesus was crucified. The result of that was that the city of Jerusalem and the temple, the holiest place in the city, were utterly destroyed. More people were crucified at that time than had ever been crucified in Judea before. Jesus' death on the cross was one of tens of thousands by the Romans to put down revolts of various kinds. It is said that when the Romans reconquered Jerusalem from the Zealots in 70 AD, the area all around the city was completely denuded of trees. They were all cut down to make crosses on which to crucify rebels. And then 50 years later, there was another millenarian outburst. This time, when the Romans put it down, they forced almost all of the Jews in Israel to leave. During the Reformation, there was another spasm of millennialism when the people of Munster came to believe that they were creating the kingdom of heaven. They too were crushed with great loss of life. And we can also notice this kind of millennial perfect world dream in the construction of some of our modern utopias, large and small. Think particularly of the notion of a utopian communism that was going to create an earthly paradise in Russia or in Cuba, among others. Attempting to bring these utopias about by violence has always resulted in mass killings and very little of heaven. Now, sometimes it helps to step outside of our Western religious traditions that we as Unitarian Universalists have inherited to shed more light on teachings that may have become cliched in our minds. Mystics of many traditions speak of and strive to exemplify the elusive concept that Jesus referred to as the kingdom of heaven. Rumi, the 13th century Muslim poet of the Sufi tradition, offers this image. An ant hurries along the threshing floor with its wheat grain, moving between huge stacks of wheat, not knowing the abundance all around. It thinks its one grain is all there is to love. So we choose a tiny seed to be devoted to, this body, one path, or one teacher. Look wider and farther. The essence of every human being can see. And what that essence eye takes in, the being becomes. Saturn, Solomon. The ocean pours through a jar, And you might say it swims inside the fish. This mystery gives peace to your longing and makes the road home, home. And so in his own life, Rumi chose to live in the beauty of what is while opening himself to the road home, the road which itself is home. And opening ourselves to the beauty of this world, the vastness beyond our own little grain of wheat, also opens us to the greater beauty of which we can be a part, creating. Rebecca Ann Parker from our own Unitarian Universalist tradition says, the down-to-earth beauty of this world compels our ethical response, a way of being that the great religious humanist Albert Schweitzer summed up as reverence for life. Many of the world's religious traditions inform our understanding of this insight. Let the beauty we love become the good we do, the Muslim saint and poet Rumi cried. Native American spiritual traditions call for noticing the beauty before us, behind us, within us, all around us. And these traditions then cultivate careful attention to the character of each living being so that we can relate appropriately to the power of life and honor all our relations. And some Buddhist meditation practices similarly foster a deep awareness of the just so-ness of things. Clarence Skinner, the leading Universalist theologian of the early years of the 20th century, wrote these words even while World War I was raging. He said, we accept the world for the joyous place it was meant to be. We like it, despite the fact that belated theologians look upon it with inherited suspicion. Let us smash the injustices, tyrannies, the sins which imprison us, and speed those readjustments which will make life here and now justify our hopes. So, this pearl of great price that the merchant found, for which he sold everything, points toward a state of being that satisfies a longing for something now that also points towards the future. And it is enough. It is our highest aspiration. It is a state in which we can love what is here and now while making it easy and possible for us to take our part in the great work of what is yet to be. It enables us to look out from the bunker of everydayness, the tiny grain of wheat that we possess, towards the possibility of loving wholeness, the mystery, openness to uncertainty, openness to wonder towards the pearl of great price. And this is enough, as Rumi tells us. So what is your pearl of great price? What is your place in this great swirl of life and love and joy and possibility and being part of a future that is yet to be? What for you is enough? Have you found that place in yourself that makes the road home, home? The poet Mary Oliver says, you do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. May it be so. And amen. Our closing hymn speaks of a time when all will be welcome. Number 407. We're going to sit at the welcome table. 407. Please stand as you read. The epistle to the Philippians, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honorable, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things.